Senator Whelan.
Margaret Cahirlock, and I too would like to welcome the Minister to the House and to commend the provisions in this important bill. It is perhaps sort of housekeeping or a sensible piece of legal scaffolding, as it were, and infrastructure which is necessary. I'm surprised it has taken this long, in fact, to put it into place, but I commend the Minister and the Government for getting it into this stage, because we do have all the benefits and all the privileges and flexibility that have been brought to us from a Europe without frontiers and a Europe without borders. And we have enjoyed the free movement of labour and goods and services. But as anyone knows who has travelled anywhere in recent years, I mean, people literally now can get into their car in Ireland and go to a football match in Poznan without meeting any roadblock or checkpoint or border controls. And likewise, criminals and criminality and crime knows no boundaries and certainly don't respect any borders. And to some extent, I suppose, we are coming to sort of put in place this kind of infrastructure, as it were, rather late in the day, insofar as that, we have had, a borderless Europe for some decades now. And it has, I think we are playing catch-up in the area of where we have, whether it's sex offenders, human trafficking, the drug gangs, I think, are exploiting this opportunity, as I said, to drive literally across Europe and into Britain and into Ireland unimpeded and unchecked. And as other speakers have pointed out, it is wreaking havoc in communities, and it's not just an urban problem. While the Garda Commissioner has pointed out that the criminal gangs are operating out of the major urban centres, I can say that, I mean, with horror, in recent weeks we had a man shot down in his own home in front of his children in Portarlington. Not a big town by any means, but nonetheless, the impact of this organised crime, drug smuggling, has reached its tentacles into every corner of the country and every part of Ireland. It's not just, as I say, a Dublin or a Cork or a Limerick phenomenon. We read in recent days where we have criminal gangs turning their hands to skimming and on credit cards and bank cards, and this is an international pursuit. So we have to really get with it and get smart and get wise and match up in terms of combating this and preventing this crime. It is possible to do so. We have the situation where hardly a month goes by then we don't have serious fuel laundering operations along our own border in the north detected. And again, it's damaging both in terms to the state and the loss of revenue, but it's also crippling legitimate businesses and making it very difficult on legitimate petrol stations and legitimate hauliers to operate to try and match up to this kind of skullduggery. So I do think that it is high time that we put the resources into this. I would ask the Minister the question, to what extent is the Europol dedicated unit in the Phoenix Park, in Garda headquarters, to what extent is it resourced or adequately resourced? Because there's very little point in sort of paying lip service to this kind of cooperation without resourcing it. Another question and another concern that arises, I've seen it within the district courts in the Midlands, where people who are came before the courts in relation to sort of whether it was stalking or some sex offences, that rather than incarcerating them, they were deported back to their own native country within the EU. I'm wondering, is there an exchange of information with the authorities back in the country that they're being returned to? In the case I have in mind, the person who was convicted had a string of previous convictions in the country in which they came from, but yet they can arrive in Ireland literally unimpeded, and I'm wondering, are the Garda authorities even notified that such a person is roaming the towns and streets of our country? And I think that's a serious matter. And it was something, I know it's not something that would be lost on Minister Lynch, and it was something that I did want to raise directly, to take the opportunity with Minister Shatter directly and to support Senator Dennis Donovan. You know, we talk about modern policing and how it has evolved, and it's not necessary to have, you know, bricks and mortar and Garda stations at every corner in every village. And, you know, I would go along with that. However, that does not mean that you don't have to have the personnel. I mean, it is true to say you cannot have the shrinkage that we have in Garda numbers and Garda resources and then say that they are gathering the information and the intelligence on the ground. You cannot beat local knowledge and the relationship that the local Garda have within their own community and organisations, and the advantages of that have been well illustrated by Senator Donovan. But the fact of the matter is that I think it's a little bit ironic on our own watch and on the Minister's watch and this government's watch, in which I'm part of, that we talk about cooperation to prevent crime across transnational crime and across Europe, when I'm ashamed to say that, you know, in towns like Mountmellick, in broad daylight now, people are being accosted when they're bringing their children to school. Some local shops and businesses have had to put locks and buzzers on their door before people are allowed to come in. And people being accosted as they drive up the streets of towns, as I said, like Mountmellick. And we cannot continue to turn the blind eye to that and say that we can continue to reduce frontline. You know, we have to make the savings. We are under the cosh from the Troika to reduce spending. But we have to ask, at what stage are we entering into an area of diminishing return, where we have towns, as I said, the size of Portarlington and Mountmellick, and there's such towns, I'm sure, across the length and breadth of the country, where you could go to the town for a week or a fortnight and not encounter a Garda on the beat or a Garda patrol car. And this allows criminal elements, including organised criminal elements, to get on with their dastardly deeds virtually unimpeded, because there's no one to keep an eye to them. So those are the kind of disadvantages, and I would believe that the cost to the state in terms of the criminality and in terms of trying to solve those crimes and to try and fight a rearguard action afterwards is more costly than ensuring that we have a Garda presence in the towns on the beat, because it does make people feel safe and secure in their businesses and on the streets and on the main thoroughfares. And I think it is an indictment of us if we say that you can continue to reduce Garda numbers, thank you, Cathaoirleach, and suggest that there is no impact in terms of the deterrent, the prevention and the security that people feel as they go about their daily routines, as they go about their business, that they see the Garda, as I said, as traditionally was the case, walking the beat in twos, meeting people, and indeed, as I said, operating as a deterrent, or at least coming through the town on a rotation in the patrol car, and keeping an eye out for ne'er-do-wells and criminal elements that would exploit that opportunity. So it's going to get to a point where I think we have reached diminishing return in the scale back of numbers. The Garda Commissioner has confirmed to the Oireachtas Justice Committee that a further 1,200 Gardaí are due to retire. And yet we have a situation where the Garda Training Centre at Templemore remains closed. And even if it was reopened next year, it would take 2 full years before we would have a new squad of young and trained Gardaí back on the streets. So I think it's something that we can't be dismissive of and can't be offhand about, that it's something that serious consideration is going to have to be given to by the Minister and by the Government. And I'd ask Minister Lynch to relay those concerns for the people in the towns across the country. But as I say, the broad thrust of the bill is to be welcomed, and hopefully it will lead to continued success in deterring criminal gangs operating in and out of this country. Thank you, Cathal.